Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to some more Shadowverse Legends Beyond. Felt like with all these different starter videos I've got going, I think probably the most helpful thing and what a lot of folks are looking for now that they've got their hands on the classes and the cards and the different deck builds that are going around. I just came from a tournament for the lobby, so there's going to be more of that, I think, every weekend. So people are definitely really trying to get their builds online and focus, the ways that they are optimizing their decks. And so this is a video to really say where new players can start, but also I'd be curious to see in the comments what people think of my evaluation of different golds and legendaries. So it is a lot to talk about, but if you really go individually in each faction, there's maybe like a gold or legendary or two that you're sort of having to evaluate. Is this essential for the deck? Is this maybe not so essential? And so I figured I'd cover all of that today. So if you like what you're seeing and want to see more of it, feel free to show your support to the channel. But other than that, let's get to it. All right, starting off with one of the most budget-friendly classes here. We've got the Forestcraft, and I think a lot of people have seen this deck. I think this has probably been recommended to me and to many other new card gamers to Shadowverse to pick up, and you can kind of see why. Although there are 4 golds that I would say essential, and we'll talk about exactly why. There's really only one legendary that is helpful to have one copy of in the deck, but even then you don't really need it. So that's why this deck tends to shine brightly when it comes to really hopping into ranked and playing a deck that is definitely in the top tiers. I think Runecraft and Portalcraft are, and in their versions that I've been seeing in the tournaments, have kind of been, I think, the decks to beat, so to speak. But Forestcraft tends to have reasonably good matchups and has a very kind of streamlined game plan. And so I would also kind of put it in the top 3 decks or classes. So Rhino Roach, very easy when you take a look at this card, right? This is your finisher. So you really need 3 of these in the deck. You can also run I think it's the bronze little cricket that you combo up to 3 and then play it to get your Rhino Roach from your deck. So it's almost like you're playing 4 copies. That's been recommended to me. Godwood Staff, just you play it. Obviously, it's very good because it can bounce your Rhino Roach back to your hand to replay again. That is kind of the main reason it's there. But it also draws you an extra card every turn. So when you're trying to continually apply pressure, which you need to get chip damage so that you can get them in the, I don't know, I would say like 12 to 14 life range, because that's playing a roach for 5 or 6, replaying it, super evolving it, what have you. You do need some chip damage somewhere in there to have a good shot at closing out the game. Glade, the air freshener of the fragrant wood. This is just such a funny name. I don't know if that was their intention. Is also, I think, really essential for the deck because it refills your hand, right? You play the 3/3, you draw 2 cards. Generally, your hand's pretty healthy, so you're going to hit the board, for anywhere, I would say, between 7 to 9 damage with his evolve ability to catch up or to push tempo. And then Bale is just really essential for your Rhino turns where you're playing Bale to clear out any pesky ward units, and then playing your Roach because these are going to cost, somewhere between 1 and 0, ideally 0. And then Lady of the Woods, really what she does, and you don't have to evolve her, is when you play her, you get the crest that allows all of your fairies to get Storm. And so that's one of the easiest ways, transitioning from kind of the mid to late game stages, to get that chip damage, because every pixie you play is going to poke in for 1 to 2 damage, depending on what your hand says. So these to me are essential. Lily is a gold that we're not putting here. She really helps the deck feel a little bit more streamlined, but I don't think she's as essential. I think really these 4 golds is what kind of makes the deck function overall, and then Arya is kind of like icing on the cake, but not terribly necessary. And so that's kind of where I would leave Forestcraft for what you need to craft. Alrighty, we've got Swordcraft here, which I've been playing a ton of. Posted a little bit about my deck list for my first lobby tournament that I was playing. I really like this class just for kind of onboarding me into the game. But the more I've played it, the more I am realizing that it really struggles with Runecraft in particular. It's got like a decent game against Portalcraft. I think that matchup's a little bit easier. And then into Forestcraft, it kind of depends. I think we have an okay matchup there. And then other aggro builds, it kind of really just like who's going second tends to depend the matchup a lot. So that's just kind of my little feeling on Swordcraft because I've been playing it so much. But these are what I would call the essentials. We are leaving some stuff out. I'd be curious to hear on each class section what people are feeling. But to me, I think Zirconia is kind of your first evolve in the game, ideally, especially when you are going second and you do have that first evolve. This is going to be the thing that you're trying to evolve, making a 6/6, making 2/2/2s, and pumping anything else that might be on the board is a huge swing. Gino, I've said it in my other videos, just is incredible because you don't have to evolve him, and he's super effective at clearing out huge units. And then you have to clear him. And then same thing with Amalia. You don't have to evolve her. She builds a board by herself. And for especially the mid-range version of this deck, not so much the low to the ground version, I really think that all three of these are essential. I will say in my current list, I'm running 3-3-2. I feel like 3 Amalias might be a little too much, but I'd be curious to see what people say in the comments. Albert is just, especially for the mid-range version, you need to super evolve this to end the game. So usually by the time we're getting to 8 play points, 9 play points, I'm hoping I have an Albert in my hand. I'm hoping I've gotten them to at least 12 life, if not a little bit lower. Playing the Albert, slamming in for 12 after I super evolve. But you don't have to play him that way, and sometimes I've actually had a really good early game and then played him on 5 and been able to have some utility there, especially if I have 2 in my hand. But for the mid-range version, I think you need to play 3. You just need to have one for the late game. It is your best way of closing out the game. Amelia is really interesting. I like this card a lot. So it's a 4/4 for 6 that then essentially costs 3 because it gives you 3 play points back. And a lot of times what I'll find myself doing is just using it as like card draw plus something else. Like I'm not really evolving her to give the barrier. Sometimes it's relevant, but really how I see her is you get to play 9 energy worth of stuff on 6 energy, and that generally is going to be a nice turn for Swordcraft. Especially getting into the late game, you're drawing those 2 cards. Very nice. Keeping your hand somewhat healthy. And that's what's cool about the mid-range version is you actually get to keep your hand fairly healthy with the build. With the likes of Amalia, or Amelia rather. So many A names here. And the neutral legendary, which I'm blanking on the name right now, but we'll talk about. So it really keeps your hand healthy so that you can kind of set things up. But if you don't get the chip damage, then it's really hard for Albert to close things out. So those are my thoughts on really what you need to craft for Swordcraft. Runecraft. I am finally able to play this deck. I'm probably going to be playing it on the ladder. Honestly, I think it might be one of my favorite decks, but also potentially the quote-unquote top deck. It can brick. It can draw very awkwardly. I think it's a like hyper aggro, something like maybe Abysscraft. They might struggle to a degree. But we'll kind of talk about why I think they are kind of this all-around powerhouse. And I would say that they're not terribly budget-friendly because you really want to have 3 copies of each of these legendaries. But in terms of the gold department, it's really like homework time. It's just very, very efficient, right? 3 energy to draw 2. You want to churn through your deck anyway because we're looking to find Cocytus in the late game for our Dimension Climb. But also this turning into the flip side is very good. 1 energy, deal 2 damage to something randomly. Demonic Call can go down to 0, right? Makes a 3/3 that also spellbursts your hand. I didn't realize how just essential this kind of card is to the deck and how it can also fuel Kuon, which is pretty nice. But I think one of the things that makes this deck so potent is Anangrea. This is a card that just clears out, potentially 3 units when you evolve it, and leaves a body or potentially 2 bodies afterward. And so I think Anangrea just is like so good at making sure you just kind of stay healthy and stay on on track for Kuon, because then I would say most of the time when I play against Runecraft and Kuon on 7, Kuon on 8, or obviously Kuon you can play on 10 and potentially win with. It really, this guy does so much work. It really reminds me of Garyu from Dragoncraft, where the unit hits the board, you're almost always super evolving it. And it just does so much work for you and provides a ton of threat, but also a little bit of defensive capability. And any legendary that does that, looking at you, Orcus, is clearly a very powerful card. It can aggress, but it can also defend. And I think, obviously, Orcus does that a little bit better. But either way, very, very, very powerful, and you really want those copies. I've only got 2 Kuon and 2 Dimension Climb, but I think I'm going to hold on to those for now. And then Dimension Climb, obviously just really important to have that incredible, disgusting late game. This going down to 0, right? Having it in your hand, playing Cocytus, and then playing this, or vice versa, is still very good. So I think that this class, I think, more and more has moved up kind of in the tier list for me, and I'm definitely going to be playing it more in the next week or so. And once we get to deck guides and stuff like that, I'll be very excited just to showcase, how this deck really cooks. But other than that, I would say that's kind of where we land with what you must craft for the golds and legendaries. So with Dragoncraft, I think there's an interesting conversation to be had. I tend to skew what you're going to want to create with this deck, what you're going to want to craft, towards the aggressive version of Dragoncraft. I genuinely think that performs better. It's definitely performed better for me. I have not fully kind of dived into the deck in terms of creating everything. I'm missing all of the fans of Otahime and 1 Lufang, I would say, as well as 1 Forte. And then we'll talk a little bit about Garyu. But I think for this class, it's somewhat budget friendly for aggro. But for the big ramp deck, it's definitely less. But I'm going to put a little propaganda out there and say that the aggressive version is probably going to be better for you competing on the ranked ladder. And so therefore, you're going to want your 3 Fan of Otahimes. This card is really scary, even combined with the little silver guy that when you discard him, you get +1/+0 for permanently, I think. The fact that you're able to make these Storm Ward cards, Storm and Ward is just a really, really nasty combo because it means you have offense immediately and defense. And so you can really just not care about what your opponent's doing in the early game, keep using your fan, probably drop 1, maybe 2 Lufangs in the game, and then close things out with Forte, or pressure things with Forte, close things out with Garyu. I do think you're going to want 3 fans. I think you're going to want anywhere between 2 and 3 Lufangs. Probably 2 is enough. I do think you want to see this card even in the aggressive matchup because, it's a 5/5 body potentially for no evolve in the later game. And then when you do evolve it, that's fine. And then Forte, I think you really need 3 of for the aggressive build to be at its peak. I only have 2 right now. And then Garyu, I'm always pretty impressed by because you're going to play him. He's going to remove something big. That deals 1 damage. You're potentially able to rush the other one, hit, then put a barrier on it so that you still have another 5-power dragon that they're going to have to chew through. And then you've got the 4/5 ward that also gets Storm. So you're usually going to hit them for 5 damage right there off of playing Garyu. And then you've got 3 bodies that they're going to have to clear. Now, for Orcus or something like that, it's no small feat. Or actually, it is a small feat, is what I was trying to say. But for other decks, it might not be possible, especially if you go, Forte into Garyu again, or another Forte. I do think that Garyu, kind of like Kuon, talking about that earlier with Runecraft, is just a really problematic card when it hits the board, when it gets super evolved. And I would say you could probably get away with 1 or 2 in the aggro list, potentially even 1. And so I'm really only talking about the aggressive builds for Dragoncraft because I think those are the best. But let me know what you think in the comments as always. All right, Abysscraft. Like I said, I haven't spent a ton of time with Abysscraft and Havencraft, but I've watched a few streams, watched a few videos, and from what I can tell, these feel like the essentials, which makes sense why I'm not playing them because I'm missing all 3 Orthrus and 2 Saris, 1 Mukon, and I just hit my 3rd Kerberos, which I think you probably are playing because it is your best closer, or best way to stabilize if you're playing the hyper aggro version, which is kind of what I would do because of her ability to gain life. But before I get into all of that sort of theory, Orthrus is just really efficient, right? It kind of reminds me of Phil. Phildau, the neutral gold, which I think is a good craft too. We'll talk about that. It's got ward, it flips, it deals 2 damage to 2 different targets. It just kind of does what it needs to do as a 2-drop that scales a little bit into the mid game, which is very nice. So I do think that for the aggro list, she tends to be pretty essential. I'm not really sure. People talk about control Abysscraft. I haven't really seen that or seen an effective version of that yet. So maybe I'm not sure if you play this, but I kind of imagine that you do because it's got ward and because it helps you in the early game. Mukon is just great. This card, when it gets self-evolves in the late game, and I love the self-evolve cards. I think that's a cool sort of feature to the game. So you don't have to waste an evolution. It makes a death touch a bane creature when it hits the board, and that's just excellent, right? And so enabling him is fairly easy, I would say, and just does a great amount of work in the mid game. Saris, I would say the same thing, right? Has Bane, you can put barrier on it, I think, if you evolve or super evolve it, and also gains life. So that's really relevant when you're taking a lot of damage in the early game to do what your deck is supposed to do. It's very funny. Abysscraft does all this sort of like self-flagellation. So anything that gains life and produces kind of like a defensive, but also Bane, body is pretty annoying. So I think 3 Saris is going to make sense. I would probably go 3/3/3 for all these golds. Aragave, the Eternal Hunter, I think probably you could get away with 2, but I do think 3 for the hyper aggro is just appropriate because, again, it's going to mostly clean up the board when it hits it, and you don't have to evolve it to do that. But then you can choose to evolve if you're ahead on life to take 3 damage from yourself and to your opponent. And that can kind of keep pushing the aggression. So probably 2 to 3 of him. And then for Kerberos, I imagine 2 to 3 as well. Probably get away with 2. This needs to be your 7-drop when you're going second, or your 8-drop going first. The fact that you can play her, and I think generally the play pattern is you kill off your little dog that gains you life, and then you super evolve afterwards, kind of like how you can sequence Garyu. Then you get the life gain dogs back again. They have rush again, and so you can pick up, I think it's 6 life, 6 or 8 life, and you get a 9/9 body, obviously that clears something out, and you get, I think it's a 4/1 rush on top of that. So Kerberos can be quite the life swing, and I think is she Orcus? Definitely not, but she's still, I think, good enough for government work here. So those are my thoughts for Abysscraft. Okay, Havencraft. And again, I'm kind of going to be thinking about more of the aggro Havencraft build. I've seen a couple creators playing that. I think that's definitely how I would play it. So this may vary a little bit, but to me, the strengths are in the golds here. So Pact of the Beast Princess making a 4/4 that can come down pretty early with Rush is just really, really efficient. Ronavero, I know some people, I think, had said this card was not good. But the fact that it is ambush, you can evolve it to kill something. And the fact that the Havencraft aggro just has access to pumping and life gain. So you can keep pumping this while it's in ambush with, I think it's the 2-drop silver artifact, to then create a lethal swing between maybe Jan or your big Falcon that comes down later. I do think Ronavero maybe is a little underrated, but I think is very well placed in the aggro decks. It's sort of like a better Fildau in a way, because of ambush, which I think a lot of people don't respect at times. It can be very good. Unholy Vessel, just having your Wrath of God, your board clear on 6 in a faction that doesn't have to commit to the board is inherently going to be powerful. So I think Unholy Vessel, I would imagine you're running 3, maybe 2 or 3 of these guys, and probably 2 to 3 Unholy Vessel. Probably 2 would be my guess for the aggro builds. Salefa, very, very just big sort of life swing, right? You're going to gain 3. You can evolve her to kill everything and give her, she's got ward herself and pump her. So she's just a really good swing in the board and kind of keeps you healthy. And I think even in the aggro builds, you're probably running 2 of her. I don't know, maybe not 3. Jan, I think, is kind of your late game powerhouse, right? Dealing 6 damage to everything and then pumping everything, what is it, +2, something like that. Especially when you have these storm falcons or eagles coming in. She really is just an absolute powerhouse. I imagine you're probably playing 2 of her, if not 3. So again, with Abysscraft and Havencraft, I have not really played with these decks as much, but I've definitely seen content around them, played against them. And I would say that these are probably the more essential crafts for this class. And last but certainly not least, we've got Portalcraft. So just starting from the top of the line here, just talk about efficiency. Miriam gets you the extra artifacts you need when you evolve her, but also as a 3/2 or 2/3 for 3 is totally fine. Evolves into a 4/5 body, just very efficient for what she does. Alouette, I would say Miriam, I don't get too scared of when I see her. Alouette is such a good card when you're playing aggro and mid range, like I tend to. Because you're going to play her, you're going to make her a 4/6. That 6 health is actually so nice on her. And then, she's going to get to play out a bike free from her hand that then probably wipes your board or comes very close to it. And then you have to deal with 2 bodies on the backswing. So every time I see Alouette, I would say my win percentage against Portalcraft goes down by easily 10%, if not more. So that card's just really incredible. Sylvia, same thing. The Sylvia feels almost like a legendary for what she is. So 6 energy for a 5/5. She gains 4 life, which is very relevant into especially the aggro mid-range matchups where you're trying to keep yourself topped up. Or you can draw 2, and you can evolve her to kill something, or super evolve her to kill 2 things, or 3 with her body as well. I mean, just these gold cards are, especially with Alouette and Sylvia, you play Alouette into Sylvia, then into Orcus. It's just so hard to beat it. And speaking of Orcus, I think Orcus is without a doubt the most powerful legendary in the game. Or I should say this. In terms of her cost, her power level and efficiency are the highest in the game. I do think down the line, if we want to adjust something about Portalcraft, I think Orcus is where I would go. Whether it's maybe less stats on her, so she's, not that it matters so much that she's easier to clear on the backswing. So it wouldn't really matter if she was a 6/6 or a 7/7 after being super evolved. But the fact that she can punch you if she's able to, she can go aggressive, right? She can deal 1 by killing a unit after super evolving, hit with Void, which is 1, then hit for another 6. Plus, other puppets if you have them in your hand. And then she leaves behind a Bane ward as well as herself. It's just backbreaking how this card just tends to end the game for Portalcraft most of the time. Ralmia, I'm never super scared to see, but is obviously a very powerful legendary as well. But Orcus is really the thing where I'm like, I went from pressuring them to now I have to clear their board and I'm losing. So I think this class definitely requires probably 3 copies of all of these cards would be my guess. Maybe you can get away with like 3 Orcus, 2 Ralmia, 2 Sylvia, but I think all of them are just inherently very efficient, very powerful for what you're paying. And that's why I think Portalcraft is also at the top tier table. All right, we can't forget about neutrals, right? And I can't forget about my boy Phil. I would probably put him in like, every aggressive deck, just a 2/2 that has a nice, potentially 3-for-1 ability. When you evolve it, it's just so good, right? You kill something, you swing into something, and then if he lives, they have to kill that. Phil is a great craft. I really think, especially if you're playing budget, this is a gold card you're not ever really going to regret making, especially if you're playing more of the aggro mid-range decks. So that's kind of my pitch for Phil as a neutral. Olivia is quite the powerhouse herself as a neutral legendary, and you can put her in almost any deck. The heal 2, draw 2 is excellent. The fact that she can evolve or super evolve another card, so it truly like 2 super evolves for 1 is quite potent, and genuinely I've seen her all over the deck lists for every faction. So I think she is an excellent investment if that's what you would like to craft, and you can really see her potential. And then Ruler of Cocytus, I think you only need one copy for most decks. I don't know if I've seen other decks running 2 copies. I guess maybe like Go Late Dragons, because they don't have a bunch of ways to draw, might be doing that. Ruler of Cocytus, it's tough. It's like, is it a good craft? Yes, because it's in one of the best decks, which is Runecraft. And then it's in one of the medium decks, which would be kind of like Dragon Ramp. But you only need one copy. So if you open multiple of this, you're going to kind of feel bad. So I would hold off unless you really want to play Runecraft. But I do think Ruler of Cocytus is the win con for Runecraft. And so you're going to need that. But I would say out of the 3, really Phil and Olivia are kind of the must crafts. And Ruler is just kind of must if you want to play Runecraft. All right, folks, as we close out things here for today, that is what I have for you on must crafts, the golds and legends for each class. I hope this was helpful for just kind of, if you had any tough choices where you were running out of, some of your essence, some of your potions to craft these cards, vials. That's the word I'm looking for. Well, I'll get the terminology one time here as I combine Magic, the Gathering, Warforged, and Shadowverse terms. But thank you for sticking with me. I hope you're finding the videos helpful. I'm looking forward to maybe doing a couple more, beginner or sort of helpful onboarding videos, and then really start transitioning into deck guides, since I've got a pretty healthy collection now. And I can't wait until we hear about new cards. That should probably be coming in the next couple of weeks, I would imagine, because it's going to be dropping sometime in July. So thanks for being here, and as always, I will catch you guys in the next one.